طيب
Guys, welcome to my
ثانيا
channel. My name is Daisy.
برايفت
For today's video, I will be reading my
ماشي
subscribers' spooky
زعما
stories.
بالفيديو
So grab your snacks, grab your kobika, and let's get straight into it.
رابيدوس استنى استنى الأولى.
Hi Daisy. I have always been interested in the paranormal, and I have had my fair share of paranormal experiences. I remember having conversations with my daughter about anything paranormal since she was little. One day, I decided to tell her a story that I had never shared before, as it still sent chills down my spine. My husband, daughter, and I lived in a nice house. It was fairly new, and we had lived there for a while. Since my daughter was still a baby at the time, I put her down for her naps fairly often. It was a normal day. I knew I would be loud downstairs since I was watching TV, so I made sure to shut the door. I ended up going downstairs and continuing the TV series that I had just started watching. I occasionally checked on my daughter, making sure she was sleeping well and that everything was fine. That's when I heard it. Voices. It sounded like someone was having a full-on conversation with my daughter. It sent chills down my spine. No one else was in the house since my husband was out working that day. I started creeping upstairs as quietly as possible, thinking someone had broken into my house. I still couldn't make out what the voice was saying, but every once in a while, I could hear my daughter making random sounds as if she were trying to talk back to whatever was in that room with her. I tiptoed to the door and quickly swung it open to try to catch whoever or whatever was in there. I let out a huge gasp when I looked over at the crib and saw that my daughter was fast asleep. No more voices. Nothing. She was fast asleep and I was so confused. I thought I was going crazy. I told my husband about it when he came home. But as usual, he never believed me since he doesn't think anything paranormal is real. Well, the next morning, I went out with my husband and we had my best friend babysit. Everything went well until we came back home to find my best friend sitting on the outside steps. She looked terrified, like she had just seen a ghost. I asked her what was wrong, and she told me something terrifying. She had heard voices coming from my daughter's room. I had never told her about the voices or anything. At that point, I knew I wasn't going crazy. My husband started to believe me more and more, but still thought that maybe it was something else. I didn't want my daughter to be in danger from whatever this thing was. So the next day, I went to a few friends who were very religious. They asked me about anything that might have caused this. And then I thought of something. I remembered that my grandma had just passed away. But I was still skeptical. I ended up leaving with a bracelet dipped in holy water and a Bible. I said prayers and let whatever was in the house know that it was not welcome there. The next time I put my daughter down for a nap, I was waiting for the voices, but nothing happened. I knew it had worked, and I felt so relieved. I still pray to make sure that nothing comes back. To this very day, I don't know what was in my daughter's room, and she has no memory of anything. This next story happened when I was little. I used to live in a very old house. The house was a perfect size for my family. I remember that my siblings and I were very young at the time, and my brother was always the prankster in the family. He would always try to play pranks on us. I also have a sister with whom I shared a room at the time. There was one night in particular when everyone in my family had gone to bed, and for some reason, I couldn't fall asleep. I looked over at my sister, and she was fast asleep. I looked again and saw that the door had swung open. I thought it was my brother trying to play a trick on me, so I told him to stop, and then the door closed. I remember thinking to myself, did he actually listen for once? It was a relief. until I felt my bed press down as if someone was sitting there. I sat up quickly and started telling my brother to stop. It was so dark I couldn't see anything. I reached my hand out to grab him, and then I felt it. Long hair. I screamed as my hand ran through the long hair. I ran to the door and flickered on the light as fast as I could. No one was there. I saw the bed rise up as if someone had just stood up from it. It sent chills down my spine. I looked at my sister, who had just woken up from my screaming. I knew it wasn't my brother or sister since they both had short hair. I got my sister to go to my brother's room with me, and we saw him fast asleep in his bed. To this day, when I stay over at my parents' house, I still don't even look at that room. When I was 18, my mom passed away. It was very hard on the family, and I had not experienced grief or loss before. So I ended up falling into some bad habits. I dreamt about her in the first few months, where I would be having a completely different dream, and then it would shift, and she would be there, and I would hold her and tell her how I missed her. It was a comfort, and I truly believed she was coming to actually visit me. These dreams stopped for years, and if I did dream of her, it would be a normal dream where she was in the background. And eventually, I stopped having dreams with her in them all together. At one point, I'm living alone in this small apartment, and all of a sudden, I started seeing these dark shadows on the top corners of my bedroom walls. It was a regular room. My bed in the middle, door to my left. As I'm laying there, I see something dark, kind of sliding down the wall. These shadows didn't have a form, honestly looked like black vapor. I would think to myself, oh, maybe it's coming from outside, maybe the glare from my phone, or the moon, etc. But at this point, I had been living here long enough to know that this was definitely different. At this time, I started having terrifying sleep paralysis. I would dream of those shadow vapor things coming down my wall and feeling something on top of me that I couldn't see. All I could do was move my eyes and try to mouth El Padre Nuestro. Eventually, I would wake up shaking and go to the living room and watch something for the rest of the night. This went on for a few weeks. I would sleep with a cross. I would pray before bed, and it kept happening. I would go maybe 2 days with peace, and then it would be back. No activity anywhere else. One night, I was in the middle of one of these dreams, and I was terrified, trying to mouth a prayer, but I couldn't say it. Like, I couldn't remember the words to it. Then, all of a sudden, my door slams open, and it was my mom. She was standing there in her favorite Monday apron, holding a broom. And Daisy, she went to work. She started smacking the wall next to her, screaming in Spanish. Órale, hijos de su madre, se me salen de aquí, váyanse a la... Translating roughly, to get out of here, you sons of... She was smacking the walls with the broom and saying all of this. And I kid you not, I saw these vapor shadow things go towards the open door. I still couldn't move, just moving my eyes from her to the shadows and back. These things went out the door, and she gave me one last look and slammed the door shut. When the door slammed, I woke up. After not having seen her in my dreams for years and seeing her for that brief glimpse, I was bawling my eyes out, and I just kept thinking her over and over. When I tell you, I have not experienced those dreams since. Either I have gotten better at protecting myself, or she really came back. One last time to protect me. Hello Daisy, my name is Diego. Sister and I love watching your videos, so I decided to share one of the many stories that occurred in my old house. Hi Diego, sister. I have always lived in a big neighborhood with a history of being haunted due to a lagoon nearby where many people have died. One day, a few weeks before Christmas, my mom, my sister, and I were on our way to a party, and my older brother decided to stay home alone. At the time, he was around 11 or 12 years old. We left the house around 4 p.m. and as we were leaving, we saw a lady crash into one of those electricity poles, causing all the lights to go out in our neighborhood. We called my brother and he told us he wanted to stay home, saying it was not that big of a deal. While we were at the party, a few hours later, I received a call from my brother. He sounded really scared. He had started hearing loud bangs coming from my parents' room. He got scared and decided to change and go to my grandma's house, which was a few blocks away. While he was changing, he said he saw a shadow out of the corner of his eye passing through our bedroom door. He started changing faster and was on his way out as we passed our living room. He swears he saw the shadow of a little girl wearing a black dress standing next to our Christmas tree. He panicked and ran to my grandma's house. Once he called us, he decided to go home. My dad went to my uncle's house to explain to him what my mother saw. My uncle is a guy who loves paranormal activity, and he lives about 2 houses down. When my dad was there, he met with my uncle and my uncle's neighbor, who was around 15 or 16 years old. My uncle explained to my dad that his neighbor was home alone and heard someone knock on his front door. When he peeked through the window to check who it was, he saw the same shadow of a little girl wearing a black dress. This is one of many stories I have. We have since moved houses, but we still live in the same neighborhood. I have a feeling that whatever was at my old house followed us, because we have had some experiences that we can't explain. Hola Daisy. I finally decided to share one of my many stories about the paranormal. This incident still haunts me, and I think about it from time to time. So, a little background. I'm from Virginia, and this paranormal incident happened when I lived with my mom in a townhouse along with my other 2 sisters, my brother, and my stepfather. This wasn't the first paranormal activity we had experienced, and unfortunately, it was not our last. My mom's house is infested with many spirits. One of a little boy with a ball, another of a lady with long hair and a white dress. Now, on with the story. My older sister had her friend Melissa over. It was a very common occurrence. My family and I had grown used to it to the point where she was considered family. It was nighttime, and as usual, I put on my AirPods and fell asleep. Mind you, I fell asleep with my AirPods in, so I couldn't hear any noise happening around me. The next morning, I woke up with an eerie feeling. The room felt dark, and not in the there was no light in the room kind of way. I paid no mind to it. It was around 5:30 a.m. and I had to get to work at 6:30. I noticed my sister's friend was sleeping next to my sister, so I decided to pick out my clothes for the day and change in my mom's bathroom so I wouldn't make any noise and wake them up. Once I was done, I headed back to my room. I continued to stay as quiet as possible and headed downstairs to get some pan con café. I left for work, but before doing so, I made sure the door was locked. This is important to the story because we have a keypad lock for our main door to the house, and the only way to open it is by entering the 4-digit code. In order to lock it, you have to motion your hand across the keypad until you hear the command, "Door locked," from the keypad, which I did hear. As I came back home from work, I saw my mom sitting on the couch watching her novelas. I went to sit with her and asked her how her day was. She said it was good, and then asked me, "Mija, ¿a qué hora te fuiste a trabajar?" I told her I left around 6 and asked her why. She told me that when she came downstairs around 7 to prepare the kids' lunch for school, she felt a cold breeze coming from upstairs and heard rustling in the kitchen. So when she went down to see what was going on, midway down the stairs, she saw the front door to the apartment wide open. She told me she began to panic, thinking it was an intruder. My mom rushed down to see if there had been anyone, but found no one. She thought she was getting robbed, so she checked everything to see what was missing, but everything was still there. She had no idea what had just happened, but began to pray as she felt a dark feeling surrounding her. So my mom asked me if I had locked the door, and I told her that I did, that I put it on everything that I know I did. But the story doesn't end there. I then waited for my sister to get home to tell her what happened, but apparently my mom beat me to it. I then just emphasized how weird the situation was, and that I had a feeling in my chest that morning that something wasn't right. My sister agreed with me, saying that the situation was definitely weird, and that her friend Melissa could have sworn as well that she locked the door before leaving. I froze. What? I asked in complete disbelief at what she had told me. She then repeated that it couldn't have been Melissa because she left at 1 in the morning. My eyes widened at the mention once more. I asked her if she was lying to me. No, why would I lie about that? Me and her had gotten into an argument and I kicked her out, which was something typical between them, so I believed her. But then I asked, how could that be? I saw her sleeping next to you in the morning. I saw her figure in the sheets and the head and everything. I know what I saw. And no, I wasn't being a sleepyhead like my sister is saying I was, lol. I know what I saw. And it may have been a little dark, but I still had my flashlight. And I saw the person next to my sister clear as day. That moment still haunts me to this day. Yes, there have been many incidents before this one, but never something like that. I firmly believe that the spirit that laid beside my sister had something to do with the front door of the house being found open. That was it for today's video. Thank you guys so much for watching, and thank you to everyone that liked in their stories, taking out the time to share your story with all of us. We seriously appreciate it. If you have a spooky story that you'd like to share, or another spooky story that you'd like to share, feel free to send it in at daisyspooks@gmail.com. The information will be in the description box, just in case you want to send in yours. But thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you guys all enjoyed, and I hope to see you guys all in the next one. Bye. Most of the houses were old and worn out, but my cousin's house was different. Her house was beautiful. It was 2 stories, freshly painted white, and looked pristine compared to the others. It had a massive white see-through gate and 4 large windows. Despite its appearance, there was something about the house that felt off. At the time, Netflix was a big deal, and my cousin was the only one who had access to it. My sister and 2 of my older cousins would often go to her house just to watch movies. Well, one afternoon, my cousin and I were at my grandma's house when we got bored and decided to go watch a movie at her place. Since we knew my sister and cousins were already inside, my cousin didn't bother asking her mom for the house key. We walked over and knocked on the door. No one answered. We knocked again, and still nothing. After waiting a while, we decided to sit near a small food store across the street from her house. Since her windows were thin, we figured my sister and cousins would eventually hear us. My cousin started calling out my sister's name, yelling for her to open the door. We kept calling for about 5 minutes, and suddenly, someone peeked through the upstairs window. The curtain moved slightly. I saw a girl with long dark hair wearing a long white dress. She looked almost exactly like my sister. My cousin shouted at her again to open the door. Instead of responding, the girl just pointed at us and smiled, but not a normal smile, it was
والله يا
mocking,
صراحة أنا تقصر
almost as she
بتخصص
was
كتير.
taunting us. At that point, we were mad. It was obvious they were messing with us. We assumed they were just playing around, ignoring us on purpose. My cousin ran back to my grandmother's house to complain to her mom about how my sister and cousin wouldn't let us in. My mom ended up calling my sister and scolding her for not opening the door. By the time we walked back, they finally opened the door for us. My cousin, still annoyed, asked why they didn't open the door when they clearly had seen us outside. That's when they told us something that made my heart drop. They swore they never left the room. For context, in the house, all the bedrooms and bathrooms were downstairs, while the kitchen and living room were upstairs. They explained that they had been watching a movie in my aunt's room the entire time and never heard us calling them. I started arguing with them, thinking they were lying. They always liked to mess with us since we were younger than them. But as I kept arguing, I noticed something. I looked at what they were wearing. None of them were wearing white. That's when I realized whoever we saw upstairs wasn't any of them. I still don't know exactly what I saw that day, but I truly believe it was a ghost. After that incident, my sister started telling me that every night around 1 a.m., she would hear small footsteps running up and down the stairs. It might not be the scariest story, but at that moment, it was the most terrifying experience of my life.
Locating target.
That was it for today's spooky stories. Thank you to everyone that shared their encounters. If you have a spooky story that you would like to share with us, please send it in at daisyspooks@gmail.com. We would love to hear your guys' stories. But that was it for today's video. I hope you guys enjoyed, and I hope to see you guys all in my next one. Bye.
Down B.
Got the spike.
Hey guys, welcome to my channel. My name is Daisy. As you guys saw by the title, I will be reading my subscribers' spooky stories. So grab your snacks, grab your comida, and let's get straight into it.
Spike down B.
Hi Daisy. It all started back when I was in the university, with nothing to do but idle away hours of boredom. My best friend and I, who were both obsessed with spooky stories, Reddit threads, and YouTube channels dedicated to the paranormal, decided to take a leap into the unknown. Out of curiosity and maybe a little recklessness, we decided to try an Ouija board. We didn't dive in without preparation. We did our homework. How to stay safe, be respectful, and dispose of the board properly. The one thing we did know was that we didn't want any lingering spirits following us back to our homes. So, we made a plan. We would find a secluded spot, far from the safety of our rooms, and attempt to contact whatever might be out there. It was supposed to be just the two of us, but on the day we decided to go through with it, another friend of ours, a fellow enthusiast of the spooky and strange, joined in. The more the merrier, right? It also helped ease some of our nerves. We didn't think to consider, though, whether our friend was truly prepared. As we gathered in secret, our first stop was the university grounds, a location we thought would be safe from prying eyes. But the risk of getting caught, and perhaps labeled as practicing black magic, pushed us to my best friend's house instead. A bit more secluded and a lot safer. We started on the terrace, sitting around the board, but the planchette didn't move. We waited and waited. Nothing. It was dull, like something was missing. Disappointed, we headed back inside, deciding to try again in a more enclosed space. My friend's locked room. There was hesitation. You see, this wasn't just any room. My best friend had already felt strange, paranormal things in that very space, like strange noises at night, and the more terrifying experience where she saw the doorknob of her room being turned and pulled as if someone was trying to enter. She has also felt some kind of elderly presence in her
Last
house.
round before the switch.
Hence, she wasn't sure. She wanted to stir up whatever might be lurking there. But at the same time, her curiosity got the better of her. So, we went ahead. We tried a few more times, but the board stayed silent. We were already following the advice we found online, turning off all electronics, sitting in silence, but nothing happened. That's when it hit us. Maybe we were doing this all wrong. We were approaching it in a Western way, speaking only English. For context, I live in India, so English is not really our first language. In fact, we have a lot of different cultures and languages here. We joked about how the spirits probably don't know English, and hence weren't replying to us. So we decided that we'd all take turns asking questions in each of our native language, hoping for a response. When it was our friend's turn, she asked, "Is there anyone who wants to talk to us?" The planchette shot across the board, right to yes. Suddenly, the air around us grew heavy, almost electric. It felt as though something had entered the room, something real. My best friend and I exchanged looks. Our excitement mingled with unease. We had been joking, but now we weren't sure if we were ready for whatever was about to happen next. Our friend asked more questions, and for a while, the planchette only responded to yes or no queries. But then she asked if she knew the spirit. Yes, it answered. The planchette began spelling out things, initials that matched her mother's name, and even letters pointing to their family's home address. At that moment, my friend gasped, her face going pale. "Guys," she whispered. Her eyes filled with unshed tears, her voice trembling. I think it's my grandfather." She broke down in tears. The air around us felt thick, heavy with emotion. We paused, unsure if we were just seeing things, or if her unconscious movements were guiding the planchette. For the sake of clarity and probably some experiment having researched on psychomotor activities that usually explains Ouija boards, we asked her to take her hands off the board to see if it could still move. But the moment her hands lifted, the buzz of energy in the room disappeared. It was as though the air had been sucked out of the room. The planchette stopped moving. No responses came. No answers. We sat there stunned in silence, the weight of what we'd felt still lingering, but somehow gone. We tried again. Nothing. After a few long moments of trying to reach out again with no success, we decided to call it quits. The experience was unsettling, if not scary. But we followed the instructions we read online and disposed of the board properly. We left my friend's house, each of us heading to our own homes. That night, my best friend mentioned what happened to her sister, and that's when we learned something odd. While we were locked away in the room, their pet tortoise had been going absolutely wild. It had never acted like that before. Was it just stress or something? To this day, we don't know if we were just caught up in the moment, if our friend was unprepared mentally, or if we actually made contact with something that wanted to communicate. What we do know is whatever felt in that room, it felt real. And that's why we decided we would never, ever try an Ouija board again. Maybe we dodged a bullet, or maybe we didn't. Either way,
No more doubts.
some things
We're ready.
are better left unexplored. Hello Daisy, my name's Michelle, and I've been a loyal subscriber for some time now and really enjoy your content, so I felt like it was finally time to share my story. I was 17 at the time, and I shared a room with my two older female cousins. Just to clarify, I wasn't under the influence of anything. No drugs, no alcohol. At the time, I worked night shifts and would sleep during the day. Even on my nights off, I struggled to sleep. So I would stay up scrolling on my phone or watching movies on my laptop. And this was one of those nights. For context, my oldest cousin and I shared a bunk bed. She was on the top bunk, and I was on the bottom, while our other cousin had a separate bed. Around 2 a.m., maybe closer to 3, I was watching a movie on my laptop, and I heard my oldest cousin shift on the top bunk. I didn't think much of it. She often moved around at night. Suddenly, I got this strong feeling that something was off. I don't know why, but something inside me told me to come. So I did. As soon as I did, my cousin climbed down from the top bunk. I kept my head low, pretending to be asleep, and watched as she walked into the closet. Now our closet wasn't big, and it didn't have a door, so I could still see her standing there. Her back turned to me. She doesn't have a history of sleepwalking, so this behavior was completely out of the ordinary. At this point, my heart was racing, and my body felt ice cold, but I was too scared to move. I kept my eyes on her, afraid that if I looked away, something even stranger would happen. Then, out of nowhere, she dropped down on all fours and started mumbling gibberish. I couldn't understand most of it, but then I heard her whisper, pretending to be asleep. She had to be talking about me, as everyone else in the house had been fast asleep. If my heart wasn't already about to explode, that sent it into overdrive. But I still didn't move. And then, what happened next completely shook me. She didn't walk back up the steps to the top bunk. She slithered like a snake. I kid you not. Normally, when someone climbed up or down that bunk bed, you could hear every step. But this time, not a single sound. To this day, I stand by what I saw. Mom swears I did, but I know.
Make peace with yourself before you pull the trigger.
Hello Daisy,
No
my
one
name
else
is
can
Britt.
judge you.
A couple of years ago, my uncle shared a story that I'll never forget. It happened when he went to a bar with his friends in Chihuahua, Mexico. They were out drinking, and he had more than enough to drink when a beautiful woman walked up to him and started a conversation. As the night went on, it got late, so he offered to give her a ride home, and she agreed. When he asked her where she lived, she told him it was behind a cemetery. He thought it was a little odd, but he brushed it off. When they arrived, he could see a small yellow house in the distance, but to get there, they had to walk through the cemetery. Again, found it strange, but he ignored the feeling. Midway through, the woman suddenly stopped, looked him dead in the eye, and said, "Ya llegamos. We're here." Confused, my uncle asked, "¿Cómo que ya llegamos? What do you mean we're here?" The moment he said that, the young woman fell into one of the tombs and disappeared. Terrified, my uncle ran back to his truck and sped away. The next morning, he couldn't stop thinking about it. He wasn't sure if he had imagined it because he was drunk or if what he saw was real. Gathering his courage, he went back to the small yellow house and knocked on the door. No one answered at first, but after the third knock, an old woman opened the door and asked how she could help him. He told her what happened the night before. As soon as he described the woman, the old lady's face changed. She looked scared. She told him that she had seen the same young woman walking alone in the cemetery many times before, and that he wasn't the first person to come to her house with this story.
Wait.
This happened in 2014 in San Diego, California. My family and I own a cleaning company, so we typically work at night when no one is in the offices. That night, it was my mom, my two sisters, and me working together. My oldest sister dropped us off since we only had one car. She went to her own job at the Scripps Research Institute, where she was responsible for cleaning the utensils used by scientists and feeding the lab animals. She was alone during her shift. Her first encounter happened as she was finishing up her cleaning station. A scientist walked into the room and she greeted him with a simple, "Hello there." He didn't respond. He just walked straight into his office and sat at his desk. She didn't think much of it at first, but after about 3 seconds, she did a double take because it was strange that he hadn't taken her. Everyone there was always friendly. When she turned back to look, the office lights were off and the door was closed, and no one was there. Immediately, she got an eerie feeling. Our family is very Christian, and we've had our fair share of experiences with spirits, demons, and even exorcisms. Our parents always taught us what to do and say because we believe we have authority over anything trying to scare us. Well, my sister hurried to clean up and get out of there. As she walked outside, she saw 2 cars in the parking lot, ours and the janitor's, whom she knew well. However, she noticed a 3rd car with someone sitting inside. She could see the light from their phone illuminating their face. She thought nothing of it at first and kept walking toward our car. But as she got closer to the car, she got a sudden, strong, eerie feeling and turned to look back. The car was empty. There was no way anyone could have moved that fast or gotten out without making a sound. She jumped into her car, locked the doors, prayed, turned on the radio, and took off toward the office building where we were cleaning. While driving on the freeway, she suddenly felt a hand grab her shoulder and tug on her. She knew she was alone in the car, and she didn't dare to look behind her. She sped up and kept her eyes on the road. As she exited the freeway, approaching a railroad crossing, she saw a man in a white t-shirt standing near the tracks, waving at her to stop. His stomach was covered in train track imprints, with blood seeping through his shirt. She immediately knew something was wrong. Instead of stopping, she kept driving. When she finally got the courage to check her rear view mirror, there was no one on the tracks. No one in the back seat. Nothing. She sped to where we were cleaning and didn't say a word until she got inside. Meanwhile, at the office building, my mom, my sister, Eva, and I had started working. It was a 4-story building. My mom was in charge of cleaning the restrooms, Eva was vacuuming, and I was taking out the trash and dusting. We had always experienced strange things there. We'd hear our names called from the dark corners when we were alone. The automatic lights would turn on by themselves. And most disturbingly, there was a little girl in a white Victorian dress who was often seen on the 4th floor. That night, Eva was vacuuming alone on the 3rd floor when she got a bad feeling. It was the kind of floor where you had to walk past 5 dark offices for the automatic lights to turn on. As she did this, she heard my mom calling her name. She took her headphones out and responded, "Mande," but got no reply. She figured maybe she had imagined it, until she glanced down at the 2nd floor and saw me finishing up my trash duty. My mom wouldn't have left me alone, especially since I was only 13 at the time. She shook it off and continued to put her headphones back in and continued vacuuming. But as she reached the owner's office, she suddenly felt a gust of air blow directly into her face, so strong that her ponytail moved. She glanced toward the empty corner of the room. There was no fan, no open windows, just an eerie silence. At that moment, I stopped what I was doing. I don't know how to explain it, but Eva and I have always had a strong bond. We can feel when something is off with the other. Without even thinking, I ran up the stairs to the 3rd floor. When I got there, she looked flustered, but relieved to see me. She didn't tell me anything. I think she didn't want to scare me since I still had work to do. My sister was almost done vacuuming, so I went back to the 2nd floor, and she took the elevator down to the 1st. As she stood there waiting for the doors to close, she felt uneasy. She prayed out loud, Señor, manda tus ángeles con sus espadas desenvainadas para que me protejan.
Yo, how should rest someone?
Lord, send your angels with their drawn swords to protect me.
Boom,
Immediately,
good clap.
she saw a flash of light. It wasn't from anything physical.
Nice.
She could see the
Spike
glow
down.
reflecting off
Last
what
player
looked like
standing.
armor.
You guys
The
just
elevator doors opened, and she hurried out. We all eventually met
Yeah,
on the
Vando's
1st floor, and just as we were about to leave, my sister got a call from our
Yes.
dad, who was living in Tijuana at the time. He said he had been sleeping when he had a nightmare, and when he woke up, he couldn't move. At the foot, he saw a tall, dark figure standing over him.
30
He tried
seconds
to
left.
speak, but couldn't. Finally, he managed to whisper, Jesus. And just like that, the shadows disappeared. As soon as he could move again, he started praying for our family. That's when Eva finally broke down and told us what had happened to her that night.
10
Before
seconds
we
left.
could even react, my oldest sister, Leslie, burst through the door. She looked
Spike
pale,
planted.
like she was about to pass out. My mom rushed to her. Leslie, ¿qué te pasó? All she did was run into my mom's arms and sob. Then she told us everything. We huddled together, holding hands and prayed. We didn't leave each other's side until we were all done. I don't know why all 3 of them were attacked at the same time, but I thank God for protecting them when we called out to him. As for the man in the white t-shirt near the train tracks, that was in Sereno Valley, California. If anyone knows anything about him, I'm interested in finding out more about it. I tried looking up information, but I couldn't find anything. And trust me, I have many, many more stories about life as a nighttime janitor.
Lo tenemos, hermanos.
Hi, my name is Erica, and I have a story I'd like to share with you. When I was around 21 or 22 years old, I lived with my dad for about 3 months. He lived in Arkansas at that time. I'm from California, born and raised. My father is Mexican from the state of Zacatecas. According to my mother, my dad had an uncle who was a shaman. He was known for practicing black magic. There were rumors that my grandmother almost lost my dad when she was pregnant with him. And in desperation, she turned to black magic to save his life. Ever since he was a little boy, my dad was known for being
One enemy remaining.
different. My grandmother once told me he was a very bad child. He would kill any living thing he could get his hands on, from birds to cats, dogs, etc. Many people who knew my dad told my mother that their marriage was the result of black magic. They claimed that my dad's uncle had a jar with both of their pictures tied together on an altar. When my dad's uncle died, they found 10 drawers on his altar, each containing pictures of different couples. That same year, all 10 couples divorced. My mother has always told me that she does not remember her marriage to my father. She says that she felt as if she was on autopilot during the entire marriage, as if she was just going through the motions of life. I wanted to give you some backstory because I believe it might help explain the experience I had while living with my dad. We shared a bedroom. He had a twin bed, and I slept on the bed while he slept on the floor. There was one night I woke up at exactly 3 a.m. I remember feeling a deep sense of dread, coldness, fear. I was facing the wall and tried to go back to sleep, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. I decided to shift my position to get more comfortable as I turned my head toward my dad. I saw something that still haunts me to this day. Standing near him was a figure that looked like La Muerte, what some people call La Santa Muerte. As they came out of the bathroom, moving unnaturally fast, as if it had come through a portal that was still open. The entity began making an upside-down cross over my dad, repeating the motion over
One enemy
and
remaining.
I was frozen in
Oh,
fear.
wait.
I remember praying desperately that it wouldn't look at me. Even though the room was dark, the moon was particularly bright that night, and its light shined through the large window, which is how I was able to see everything so clearly. Slowly, I turned my head back toward the wall and continued praying to God, begging to fall asleep. Not long after that night, I left Arkansas and returned to California. I've only told a few people about this experience, but no one has been able to explain what I saw. To this day, I still think about that night